We were told if you go to school, get good grades, get into a good college, you're going to have a good job, a good family, and a good life. And it seemed as easy as do these things and shit will work out. Over and over again, we've lived through generation-defining events, the worst market crash of all time multiple times, terrorist attacks, the list goes on. And we found out over and over again that the structures we thought were solid were like sandcastles. And now we're at a point as we approach midlife where we will be experiencing the Neptune square. And this is the part where we get to wake up and see the illusion for what it is and get set free. Hey everybody, welcome back. I am Dana Solara. I'm an astrologer and spiritual coach, and we are talking about the Neptune square specifically for millennials, very specifically for millennials with Neptune in Capricorn natally. There's going to be a group of millennials who have Neptune in Sagittarius, and we'll get into that, but I want to really talk about what's to come for those of us with Neptune in Capricorn today. What I'm not going to do in this video is go deep on the Neptune square as a general transit. I did that already on Nightlight Astrology, so I'll link that video in the description. If you want to watch that first, wouldn't be a bad idea. We have chart examples and we talk deeply about the archetype of Neptune and what a square is all about and things like this. Here we're going to talk about what might occur for millennials as a generational cohort as Neptune moves through Aries and squares our natal Neptune in Capricorn. So the first thing you need to know is, where is your natal Neptune? If you were born between 1981 and 1984, as well as June 22nd to November 21st, 1984, you have Neptune in Sagittarius. You've actually already had your Neptune square. It's done. It's over. And it'll be really interesting to hear from you guys in the comments about what has shown up for you, what it brought to the forefront for you. Your square would have happened while Neptune was in Pisces, roughly 2021 to 2025, ages 40 to 42. So yes, please tell us what it looked like for you, and I'll be really interested to hear, given what I'm about to say, I think is going to happen for us with Neptune in Capricorn. So most millennials are going to have Neptune in Capricorn. Now, again, I don't want to reiterate and go deep on Neptune as an archetype, but generally speaking, what is it? It's illusion, it's deceit, it's transcendence. It is a letting go that allows you to connect with something bigger than you and something that takes you away from the physical. I think of it as like the process of evaporation or going through fog. It can be very confusing to be in a Neptune transit. It can be hard to know what's real, what's not. And it's really easy to get caught up in things that take you away from yourself, like addiction, drinking, drugs, that kind of thing. So you can see how the Neptune square fits in with the stereotype of the midlife crisis, because really what a Neptune transit will prompt you to do is get free. I think at the bottom of a Neptune transit, there's this impulse and this desire to, find freedom, to feel open, to feel unencumbered, to feel connected to something bigger than yourself, which is to say, like, to let go. And if by the time we get to the Neptune transit, we find we're clenching really tightly or we don't feel very free in our lives, then we are going to find ways to get that freedom. For my Neptune and Sag people, with your natal Neptune being an immutable sign, and that means the square is also an immutable sign in Pisces, which is the ultimate zodiac sign of letting go. Both your natal and transiting Neptune were ruled by Jupiter at that time. So I definitely could see this being like the genesis of your spiritual awakening, exploring spirituality in ways that you hadn't before. And it could also be just exploring meaning and what is important to me and what have I invested my time and energy and belief in. I would imagine for Neptune and Sag people, there was a big reckoning and a big moment of truth possibly around what you've invested belief in and what you can no longer invest your belief and faith and hope and optimism, etc. in. And unfortunately, for some of us, it could have been that we were investing our hope, faith, belief in something that we found out was a bit of a mirage. It wasn't what it seemed. And hopefully that's not the case for anybody, but I wouldn't be surprised to hear of like, yeah, I got swindled, or I got roped into this situation where I found out later it was all a big lie. It's like joining a cult energy, to be honest. But let us know, Neptune Sag people, how it went for you. So let's talk about Neptune and Capricorn. I want to paint the historical picture for you of what was going on while Neptune was in Capricorn. The Berlin Wall in 1989, USSR dissolves in 1991. President Bush's New World Order speech, there was this belief that we had turned a page, a chapter has closed, and now we are here, things are good, and this is the way it's going to be. There was this essay that was published that became a book, you might know about it, called The End of History, ? And it was this argument that with the collapse of the USSR, democracy and capitalism had won, and they were the default, and they were going to be the new paradigm moving forward, and there would be no other competition. It was the dominant force, and it had proven that. And so there was this attitude in the 90s, and when Neptune was in Capricorn, that the structures are solid. And that's very Capricorn, isn't it? Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn was also in Capricorn during this time. We're going to look at the chart in just a second, but a couple more things that were going on here that I found really interesting. One is the pension getting replaced with the 401k. Now, this was something I knew like very little about before reading about it, and I still need to know more about it. But essentially, prior to the 1980s, the standardized private sector retirement package included a pension, which would give you a check for the rest of your life. And it was on the company to provide that. Well, then there's this shift that happens, and I don't understand the full legal technicalities of it. Long story short, companies start switching from a pension plan to a 401k. Now, that change is significant for individual people because if the market crashes, it's the individual who is in trouble. And that's exactly what we saw happen in the many financial crashes that have happened in our lifetime. Particularly the one in 2008 is the one I happen to remember most vividly. The risk moved from the institution to the individual, but the language of what it was never changed. Like, you got a job and they told you that you have an employment covered retirement plan, and it had a name that sounded like what it's always been, like a promise that you would have a paycheck after you retired. But the guarantee of that money being there became a market bet without any real discussion about that being the case or the individual having any say in it. So it still looked like this solid structure. Hello, Saturn. Hello, Capricorn. But it was made of nothing. It was made of literal bets on the market, right? And that was the world we got born into, where everything seemed really solid, but it was actually kind of all dissolving at the same time. And now I want to go ahead and put the chart on the screen for you so we can take a look at this together. All right, we are at the end of November 1984, and you can see Neptune has just entered Capricorn. Neptune will be alone in Capricorn from November 1984 through 1987. Then we have Saturn and Uranus entering the picture in 1988. And it's really interesting because Uranus and Saturn enter Capricorn at the same time. So what does that mean? Well, if Uranus is innovation and breakthrough and Saturn is structure and time and boundaries, it seems like the structures are blowing up. It seems like what was once solid is no longer, has been obliterated. There's a brand new way to look at how we build things, and the structure of things is completely changing at an atomic level, if you will. And if you think about this idea of the New World Order, that makes a whole lot of sense. That feels, from a concept perspective, exactly what we would expect for Uranus and Saturn entering Capricorn at the same time. But it's fascinating because there was this idea that what was being built in its place was so fucking solid, and what we come to find out is it's not. You look at the institutions that we were told as children growing up were untouchable, and you see them falling apart one by one, from things like 9/11 happening to the many stock market crashes to even something as trivial as like the death of the mall. So we see that here. And this is 1988 to 1990, where Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are all in Capricorn. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction happens at 10 degrees and 11 degrees. I'm going to put that on the screen for us. So the first is March 3rd, 1989. Then we have June 23rd, 1989, and November 13th, 1989. Uranus will also conjoin Neptune. That happens in 1993. February 2nd is the first date, August 20th is the second, and October 24th, 1993 is the third. I should go back though, because, and one thing we missed actually is that Saturn leaves Capricorn before that in 1991. So basically 1988 to 1990, you've got all three planets there. 1991 to 1996, you've got Neptune at the later Capricorn degrees. Uranus is still present through 95, and we said in 93 makes those conjunctions to Neptune. So what does it all mean? Well, again, Saturn conjunct Neptune is kind of like the pinnacle of this. If you think about Neptune being in Saturn's sign, it is the structure and the dream being fused together in such a way that you never ever question it. And I think that's part of what our Neptune square is going to be about. If Neptune and Neptune transits want freedom, they want to let go, I think we will be compelled to let go of the structures we thought were solid, but were really just like washing away at the waves beneath our feet without us even realizing it. And some of us have been doing that. I think some of us have recognized that pattern already in our lives, and we have been kind of dealing with that in our own way. And I think that's why you see spirituality having a resurgence as well, because people are rejecting traditions. I think that's another way we can think about this. We see through the illusion of the old traditions that are no longer working for us. And this is where we get to talk about the fact that Neptune is now in Aries, and the fact that our Neptune square is going to happen while Neptune is in Aries. So if Neptune in Capricorn is like the mirage of the structure, the giant city that when you get up to it, turns out it's all cardboard houses, right? That's Neptune and Saturn, and this like idealism of capitalism and extraction, very Neptune and Cancer too, and that capitalism had won, period, end of conversation. Well, now we have Neptune and Aries, and Aries is ruled by Mars. It's the sign of the spring equinox, and it's all about beginnings, independence, starting fresh, and doing things in a new way. So a square is going to create friction for growth, and it's going to put us in challenging and uncomfortable positions. I'm thinking, therefore, that Neptune in Aries is compelling us to do things our own way and to go beyond the structure as we've known it, as we've accepted it, as we've bought into it, as we've believed in it. That old structure is dissolving before our eyes. And we now have to learn to do it ourselves in a new and different way, which is to say we have to rely on ourselves. We've realized that we can't rely on these systems. They are, and we're always going to fail us. And now we know, if we can be like brave enough to acknowledge it, because that's kind of what Aries is all about too, is having courage. We are going to be compelled to find courage to transcend those old limitations, because it's scary to accept that the structures that have held your life together are nothing more than fog or an illusion. But we can do it. The other thing to say about this is Saturn is also here, which means that if you were born between 1988 and 1990, you are also experiencing your Saturn square right now. So you're having your Saturn square, and then you're going to move into your Uranus opposition and your Neptune square. It's going to feel like a busy and pretty transformative time, and it's going to be marked for us specifically, those born with Saturn and Capricorn. It's going to feel a lot like having to face fears, having to be brave, having to go where you have not gone before, and trust and bet on yourself. Now, I've talked broadly about Neptune being like a foggy experience, and I think with Neptune and Aries, it's not quite that way. Because it's so hot, Aries energy is, it's quite clarifying and it's quite passionate. And fogginess is like, those two things are kind of polar opposites. So I think Neptune in Aries shows up more as rage that can blind you if you let it go too far. It's like going to war energy. It's very much Joan of Arc energy. It's about fighting. It's about fighting for and protecting what matters to you. But it also is kind of reckless Aries energy. It can go too far without thinking about it. It can be quite impulsive. So in some ways, I want to offer the same advice that I would give to anyone with a Neptune square going on right now, which is to treat things like an experiment rather than to commit completely. Because I do think the combination of a natal Saturn in Capricorn and a transiting Saturn in Aries is like zero chill. I am fucking going for it. And when Neptune is in Aries, it's like there's this passion behind it as well. So I think you're going to see a lot of millennials during the time of their Neptune square get very loud where they haven't before. I think you're going to see people get fed up. And it can be really tempting to put your faith and hope in someone else to save you. And I think that is the trap, perhaps, because we are in the sign of independence with Aries. And this whole Neptune natal promise is about learning to see through false structures, illusory rules and boundaries that were just made up. They were material. They were never made to last. And being able to see through that illusion is really like a huge part of our cohort, our generational cohort's natal promise. So if we fall into that again, if we are here in Aries waiting for someone to save us, we are going to find ourselves in a challenging place, because I think Neptune in Aries is going to compel us to do things ourselves, to create the life that we want to live, the world that we want to live in, to stop waiting for somebody else to come and save us, and to figure out how we can start to do that ourselves. I think it really looks like millennials are here to clean things up, to start tearing down the elusive but perhaps comforting myth that all of this is solid, that if you invest in the system, if you just go to college and get a degree, you'll make good money. If you just work really hard, you won't have any debt. If you just get married and have kids, you'll be happy. Now, by the time we were growing up, I think a lot of people weren't saying those things out loud, but it was still very much the expectation. There was a path that you needed to follow. Even if the world is falling apart around you, you should just trust the system. I think millennials are here to throw that false belief in the fire, which is very fitting for transiting Neptune being in Aries during this square. And again, it can go a many number of ways. One of the classic pitfalls of a Neptune square is that you get lost in ideologies and beliefs and behaviors and choices that really take you away from yourself. And like I said, I think waiting for someone else to save us might be part of the problem there. On the other hand, I think we can find that transcendence and unity that Neptune can bring if we start becoming really vocal and passionate about fighting for what matters for us. I actually think that Neptune can be quite humanitarian. I think this square can bring individual people back into a collective sense of humanity, because that's really what we've lost as the world has become so digital and we've lived through COVID and all these other things that have made us more and more siloed. I wonder if this square isn't going to help us remember our common humanity and bind us together a little bit more as a result of opening our eyes and waking up to the flimsiness and lack of solidity to the structures that we once thought were really fucking solid. I also think there could be an impulse to do it all yourself, and that could be a trap at this time as well. That maybe you want to blow it up and start completely over, which sounds more Uranian, but because we're in Mars ruled territory, because we're in Aries, it does seem like a possibility. So there's this fine line between breaking free from old structures, old rules, old limits, and finding your own way. That's independence to me versus isolation and I've got to do it all myself. I've got to be the hero. That could get us into trouble too, I think. The one thing that I would tell anyone going through a Neptune transit to be extra aware of is when you feel certain. If you feel super certain about something and a Neptune square or any kind of Neptune transit really is perfecting within a couple of weeks, I would say wait it out and see if you can dabble rather than commit, because what feels really certain may not feel certain at all in a couple of weeks, a couple of months. And so you want to explore the possibilities of and really use your imagination to explore the possibilities of rather than taking actual steps. If you are exploring with your imagination and you're feeling pretty sure, pretty confident, and like you really want to take some action, take 1% action, take small steps. Do not commit to anything new. And some of us won't be able to avoid that, but just be a little more cognizant of the contracts you're signing, of the deals you're getting into, of the people coming into your life. If a promise sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So with that, I think we've said all we can say about Neptune in Capricorn natives receiving their Neptune square in the next couple of years. Listen, I am right there with you. I'm going through it too. So let me know what you're expecting, what you're thinking about this, what questions you have about this. I would love to hear from you. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. You've made it this far, you might as well subscribe. And let me know what you guys thought of this, okay? Until next time, I hope you have a great day wherever you are, and I'll see you later. Bye.